Hard not to get whiplash trying to track this story. Let's bring in Stewart Webb, who is the editor of DefenseReport.com, coming to us today from British Columbia. You know, Stewart, at one point everyone's worried there's going to be an open war, and then all of a sudden it seems like both sides are stepping back from this. The Iranians, perhaps to save face, had to do something, but no one was killed or injured in their attack. And now the president is saying everything is okay and almost seems to be trying to move on.
Yeah, exactly. However, Trump did say that he is going to be imposing further sanctions on Iran. And if we look back, last year when Iranian sanctions were put on, they started seizing oil tankers, in the Strait of Hormuz. This is actually where essentially the conflict started between, President Trump and Iran. And the problem has been that there has been a lack of communication from the Trump administration diplomatically to Iran about what they need to do in order to get those, sanctions removed and, gain back on the table for the nuclear treaty deal. So we'll see what's going to happen in the future. But when Khomeini also says that it's going to be a slap in the face, to the United States, and something further may happen in the future, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And also the fact that, when two sides are sort of nose to nose, so to speak, Stewart, both perhaps are looking for what are known as off-ramps. In other words, how do we get out of this without looking bad?
Oh, exactly. And also, for the Iranians, they might also need to pressure the United States a little bit more to get back to some sort of diplomatic table, at least for communications. So you might see that the Iranians might supply the Houthi rebels in Yemen a little bit more, talk to their allies in Lebanon with Hezbollah, and encourage them to act a little bit more. Even a few years ago, it came to light that Iran was actually supplying ammunition to some of the conflicts in Africa. So there's a lot that Iran can do to sort of make, some pressure towards the United States. And for the United States, they need to have, Trump did a great thing today by saying, okay, we're not going to take any military action. But as you said, yeah, we're going to need to find that off-ramp, and, it might need the direction of a third party like Canada to step up, or, Great Britain.
Yeah, we're going to show the map of the region just to, again, situate our viewers, all the different players here, not just Iran and Iraq, but of course Saudi Arabia, Yemen, the Israelis, the Lebanese, the Syrians, the Turks, and on it goes. Your read as well, when we look at the U.S. troops that are in the Middle East, and we're going to show our viewers, I believe the Americans have got, north of 50,000 troops in and around that region, Stewart, not only in Saudi Arabia, but also in Jordan and elsewhere. I mean, there are a lot of Americans stationed in this part of the world, both on the ground, and of course, naval assets are being moved in. There's a carrier group as well. I believe the Truman is in the region. So your take on whether we are going to see more attacks against Americans, or is that it? Was that a way for Iran to say, look, this is retaliation, we're firing these missiles, and then nothing, perhaps?
Well, and then there's the other thing, is that only a couple of days ago, Al-Shabaab in Somalia attacked a base that had Americans there. So it may not just be, Iranian, allies for some of that. Other groups that have no connection with Iran themselves might take advantage of the situation. That heightened status that, everyone's looking for an attack, so therefore we'll get back into the international headlines.
Something else, too, and we're going to show the balance of power that exists. When you think about what the United States has at its fingertips, I mean, it is vastly, vastly powerful, the most powerful country on the planet, of course. We've got some of these numbers here, Stewart, as you and I are talking. The defense budget, $650 billion, give or take, versus $13 billion for the Iranians. The active military personnel, the reserve personnel, we're going to go on to show tanks and air assets as well. Really only when it comes to artillery do the Iranians have any sort of advantage. And yet Iran's military is quite sophisticated, certainly more so than the Americans faced in Iraq back in 2003 when they invaded.
No, exactly. And, of course, the other issue is that, let's say, by, chance that this did turn into be a shooting war. Iran may not be able to stand the United States for long, but if the United States were to occupy or, even just try to launch an attack from Iraq, Iran's going to have the Shia, population, both Iran and also in Iraq, launching a counterinsurgency, and we've had that happen in 2004 and onwards. So it doesn't matter how much Trump boasts how much they've spent on the military. It really depends on assets on the ground, their counterinsurgency model, and their wherewithal to withstand collateral damage, casualties. Sorry.
Also, the Canadian troops, Stewart, in the Middle East, who were many of them, a couple of hundred anyway, I think about 500 or so in Iraq, who have been moved out anyway to Kuwait, a certain ongoing process. We're not sure how many are in Kuwait or not. This is obviously a very fluid story. Your read on how long that temporary redeployment might last, does it make sense in your mind?
Well, it's all about force protection, right? So what we are doing, and some of our allies are removing some of the non-essential personnel out of Iraq and back into Kuwait or elsewhere, just so they're out of harm's way. It really depends on how long the NATO training mission is going to be suspended for, which Canada is leading. Today the RCMP have pulled out their 12 trainers from their own training mission for the Iraqi police. So as long as these tensions continue, that training mission is ended, and also any special forces operations that come out of originate out of Erbil, not only for Canada but also for other the United States, are essentially on hold. So a lot of commentators have discussed that the war on ISIS is on hold while these tensions continue.
All right, Stewart, as you and I are talking, we just want to show our viewers as well some footage coming in from Ottawa where Canada's Transportation Minister Marc Garneau is arriving. He will be one of the key ministers taking part in this press briefing that's set to happen in just about 3 minutes from now. And we've got a video box up on our screen as well. The Prime Minister will speak, Stewart, about this larger issue, of course, involving the plane crash that happened in Iran. 63 Canadians were killed. And as Transportation Minister, Marc Garneau, of course, playing a role as we try to figure out what exactly led to that crash, why that Ukrainian Airlines plane went down. Back to the larger issue of these tensions in the Middle East between Iran and the United States. Your read on what we're going to see now in the next couple of days?
Hopefully nothing. Iran's launched their attacks. The United States has essentially said, okay, well, that's happened. Let's just try to move on. Hopefully Iran moves on a little bit more too, and hopefully the diplomats can actually start talking. I noticed that today Trump had already talked to the Secretary General of NATO and said that NATO should be more involved in the Middle East. Now, we'll see what that equates to. I don't think many of the NATO members actually want to deploy in the Middle East for any longer deployment than needs be. And also the question is, well, what are they going to do aside from the training mission in Iraq?
One last thing just before we go has to do with Donald Trump talking about a greater NATO involvement in the Middle East, Stewart. This is the same guy who said NATO was irrelevant and needed to pay a lot more, questioned its value and its worth. Now he says they need to get involved in the Middle East.
Yeah, exactly. And, with Trump saying that, again, who knows how many, NATO members actually want to step up and deploy. And we don't even know what the mission would be in the Middle East. Should NATO members take more of a diplomatic action? Should they deploy troops at U.S. bases? We don't really know what Trump wants out of that. And you're absolutely correct that, Trump has been lambasting NATO for not doing enough. But we're not in a conflict yet, and probably won't be. Now, if we do go into a conflict, then I'm assuming NATO would, help out with the United States. But there are other issues, even within a deployment, because of operational intelligence sharing issues that arose during Libya and Afghanistan.
Stewart, always good to have you with us, and we appreciate you taking the time today for us on CTV News.
Thank you, Todd. Pleasure.
All right.